Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Business by Belief. We're in the month of February now. It seems like the year is already flying by. Man, we're just barely getting started. So it's been a good start to the year. Business has been good, and family has stayed mostly healthy. Knock on wood. And I hope that y'all have as well. But if not, just keep praying. God has a plan for all of us, and He'll get you through anything that you might be going through right now. I wanted to kind of talk about something that's been on my heart for a while, and I don't want to get too specific because I don't want to. I don't want anybody to know who I'm talking about or anything like that. And this is sort of something that has happened over the course of my life, off and on, as long as I can remember, and it's always affected my desire to to get close to people, to develop relationships, to maintain relationships, because just as we all do, it seems that inevitably you get let down or disappointed, or whatever the case may be, and I've always had kind of a real soft spot for that, I guess. It's happened a lot, and I've always found it, the older I got, the harder I find it to trust people and to confide in them and to give them my time and my effort and my energy and prioritize them over other things, because typically it comes back to bite me in the rear end, or or I'll lose those people out of my life somehow. And that also happens at work. Like we get coworkers that we grow real close to and develop bonds and relationships with, and or employees that we grow close to. And especially if you're a small business owner, these businesses are our babies, right? They're like our little kids, and we tend to be very cautious about who we let into those, who we give information to, and at what they have access to. And I have a hard time just letting them go. Like if I hire somebody and bring them on, I have a hard time wanting to let them out on their own, because once they're out from under my wing, I don't know what they're doing all the time, and I can't see what they're doing. I just have to trust that I've taught them what they need to know to do the job right, and I have to trust that they will have the integrity and they'll have that ethical fortitude to not do anything that would diminish the business or diminish what I've spent worked so hard to build. And I've been very fortunate that that has not happened in work. However, the latter with friendships has happened, and we all go through that in life, right? Like it is what it is to a degree. We're all human, we're all of the flesh, and we all disappoint people. We let people down. There's concrete cracks. If there's one thing you can guarantee about concrete, it's going to crack. If there's one thing you can guarantee about human beings, is we're going to let somebody down. That's it's just going to happen. And it's painful when you lose somebody, a confidant or a friend, or a an employee or a coworker that you developed a bond with over time. It's painful, right? I mean, not to sound sappy, but it can be heartbreaking. You've invested a lot of time and energy and emotion into that relationship, whatever level it may be on, and it's heartbreaking to lose that, especially if you're somebody who doesn't open yourself up to get in those situations where you don't typically open yourself up to making new friends and letting people in, or you don't open yourself up to bringing people into your place of work or to your business because of things that have happened in the past, or because you have some second guessing. You just don't know what's going to happen when you get into one of those situations where you start divulging into people information that is either confidential, like in a business setting, or maybe private and personal, that you've never told anybody else, right? So once you've pushed your way through that barrier of trust and you give that information out, it's hard when that falls apart. It's hard when the other person, for whatever reason, might pull away, whether they just don't want to be involved with you on a friendship level anymore. Maybe you've done something to them that they're just not telling you. Don't know what it is, and they're not telling you what it is. maybe they've just decided to kind of isolate themselves from everybody else. Maybe they have found a better opportunity somewhere else and found another job somewhere else. And you kind of feel foolish almost because you've given and given and given, and they've taken and taken and taken, and instead of it being a full back and forth relationship, now that person's just gone. They vanished. I'm sure that you've done that to somebody. I know I have too. And you kind of continue to try to stay involved and try to rekindle it, try to keep it alive, try to reconcile any differences that may have come up that may have caused it to happen. But they just continue to try to pull away, stop communicating, stop responding. Maybe you can still be cordial at times when you see each other, but that's it. You've really gone from you just met, you've developed a close relationship, and it fell apart for some reason, and now you see each other, and you just kind of it's kind of the back to the haze and how you doing, and that's it. You don't talk for a few weeks. I'll tell you, it makes it even more difficult when you have maybe a bigger company or a larger organization where you've had a lot of people who have contributed to the success of a person, to the involvement of a person, to a person maybe climbing up the ladder a little bit, to pay raises and perks of a job, and then all of a sudden that person leaves, or that person just kind of seems to turn their backs on those who helped. If a large group of people help somebody kind of get to a point in their career or in their lives where they're kind of doing what they wanted to do and they're being successful with it, and then they just kind of turn away, right? Like we've all been there where we just kind of feel like we were stabbed in the back, and I'm guilty too. I've done that to people on occasion. I know that I've not treated them properly or just kind of walked away from them. But when you do it to a large group of people like that, it's kind of like they're alienating themselves from everybody else, and you may not know why. You may never know why. The hardest part about that is just to stay humble and not feel anger or betrayal based on what happened. Maybe just be happy that you were able to help. Be happy that for the time that person was in your life, you were able to talk about some things or help and assist with some things, or just be there for that person. Maybe that's what they need, and that's where God placed you in that time, was for you to help that person or that person to help you grow on whatever level. So whether it's in business or personal life, we've got to look at it as a moment in time that God set aside for this particular thing to happen. For whatever reason, He brought that person into your life, and He has taken that person out of your life. He brought that person, or He brought this group of people into that person's life to help, and now He's removed that person from this group of people. For whatever reason it may be, it's not really our call to make, right? That was God's decision. When you've been able to spend so much time with people like that, it's hard not to feel betrayed. It's hard not to feel angry. And how do we usually handle those situations? I mean, we usually handle them with anger. It's usually the first one. I think anybody who feels like they were kind of left on the back burner and with no explanation, or left on the back burner after helping so much, or being helped so much, that we just feel anger that we feel like that we wasted our time. We wonder maybe what could we done different. All the what ifs start to pop into your head. But we definitely get angry. We start to feel resentment, definitely some feelings of betrayal, and in some cases also revenge. I know that there are some people. I've got some friends who have lost employees before, and they poured their heart and soul into these people. And of course, when you're talking about work, you're talking about money. You've got training and expenses that go into having these employees, and revenge crosses your mind, like, well, I'm going to call this other place that he worked for, and or he's going to work for, and just tell him A, B, C, and D. He does this, he's bad at this, he and some of it might not even be true, but that's the enemy getting a hold of you when your feelings have been hurt. And we've got to be very careful with doing that. How should we handle these situations as Christians, within the church, within our personal lives, within our workplace? How should we, as as professing Christians handle these types of situations, not only for an example to others, not only for maybe healing between the two parties, but for individual peace and individual contentment. I mean, the same way Jesus handled his. Top of the list, we've got to show grace. We have been shown grace. I've been shown more grace than I ever deserved. And for me not to show that same kind of grace is just wrong. It's not always easy. And it takes, it has taken me a lot of prayer and reflective time and meditating to get to a point of showing that grace, but even more so, it's taken me more time to show forgiveness. Forgiveness is a hard thing to do when you feel like you've been betrayed, when you feel like somebody that you trusted has let you down and really doesn't seem to care about it. That's probably what makes it harder for most of us is we take it very personal because, if the person doesn't seem to acknowledge it or it doesn't seem to bother them, then, that really hurts. Like that stings. If you lose an employee and they don't seem to even be gracious at what you did for them to get them to where they're at so they could, elevate their career to the next level with wherever they're going, that stings. And the same can go for a loss of a friendship or somebody close to you, friend or family, whatever it may be. And something else that might be hard to do would just be happy for them. Be happy whatever they're going through. You know, they're going through it, and if you've given an honest effort and tried to help them and talk to them, and you've prayed for them, and you know, just be happy for where they're at. I mean, and the reason for that is God is leading them somewhere. It's not really our place to know where it is, but He might have pulled that person out of your life or out of your company for whatever reason because He's got a purpose and a plan for that person. He's also may have saved you from something that could have come from that person. What if, just general scenario, that person was going through a financial crisis and you didn't know about it, and God moved that person somewhere else before He embezzled money from you and your company? What if that person was going through some hardships at home and God removed that person from your life before that person started to rub off on you some of the negativity or the hurt feelings they're going through right now because of something they've got going on in their life, and God's removed them from your life to keep you from having to deal with that. Whatever His plan is, whatever His will is being done, and it's not always pretty and it doesn't always feel good, but I feel a lot better knowing that He has a plan and a purpose for everything He's doing, and it's not just my feelings are hurt and there's nothing to come of it except for just hurt feelings. As in all things, we just got to continue to pray about it, whatever the situation is. And sometimes we just don't need to say anything at all. Sometimes we just need to be quiet and let God do His job, follow His instructions, and don't let this disappointment be a roadblock for building future relationships. Don't let it deter you from getting new friends, from developing a new bond with somebody, putting your trust in people again, or hiring people and bringing new people on and getting them involved in your business. Don't let it be a deterrent for that. In Romans, it says, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. By doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, which is the same as shame and remorse. So just continue to show love. It's not an act of revenge. You're not heaping burning coals to put revenge on. You're heaping burning coals so that they may be convicted about what they've done, and maybe they won't do it to somebody else. We just got to learn to forgive and pray. And those situations where people hurt you, I'm sorry if it's happened to you. It has happened to all of us, and we've been guilty of it ourselves. So, but when it comes to business, it stinks, but that is part of turnover, right? And to continue to pray about it and continue to bring people in who you believe can serve you well and also serve God while you're serving God as well, and help you grow that business and just be a participant and not a detractor to other people. So that was it. As always, reach out if you have any questions or episode suggestions, and I'll be glad to listen to them. Love everybody and take care.